I had spent my entire life working for own company, and one morning it was over. And years of loyalty, of coming in early and locking up late, ended with a single envelope. Restructuring, they called it to me. It felt like a racer. I was no longer Evelyn Parker, operations manager of North Shore Logistics, just a woman nearing 60 holding a cardboard box of memories. The salt air from Gloucester Harbor stung my eyes as I carried it to my car. I told myself not to cry. I had faced storms tougher than this. When I arrived at my son's house in Marblehead that evening, I still had a faint hope that Nathan would understand. He'd always been the ambitious one, sharp suit, steady job in corporate finance, a house with white shutters, and a picture-perfect wife. Surely he'd remember everything I'd done to give him that life. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching the light bounce off the marble countertops I'd helped them afford years ago. "Nathan," I began softly, "I wanted to tell you before you hear it from someone else. I left my job today. The company's going through changes," and he looked up from his laptop, frowning as if I'd just announced something trivial. "You what? You quit?" "No, I didn't quit. They laid off several people. Mom." He cut me off, his tone slicing through the air. "You're almost 60. What are you going to do now? You don't have a pension, no steady income. We can't support you." The bit of warmth in my chest evaporated. "I'm not asking for support," I said quietly. "I just thought I'd stay for a few weeks until I figure things out. Get back on my feet." That was when his wife Rachel came down the stairs, her heels clicking like a countdown. "Stay here?" she asked, laughing under her breath. "Nathan, that's ridiculous. We barely have space as it is. Maybe your mom should look into one of those senior dorms for retired employees." Nathan didn't even flinch. "She's right, Mom. You've got to be practical." I stared at him, my own son, who once clung to me during thunderstorms, who cried when I couldn't afford his baseball camp. My voice trembled. "I worked for you. For everything you have, every late shift, every dollar saved, it was for you." He sighed impatiently. "You did what parents are supposed to do. Don't guilt-trip me now." "You should have planned better." Rachel folded her arms. "Maybe it's time you learned how to live without depending on others." Something inside me cracked quietly, like old glass. I set my purse on the counter and looked at them both. "You're right," I said. "I should have learned that sooner." I turned toward the hallway, my heels echoing across the tile. Behind me, Nathan muttered something about being done with emotional drama. I didn't answer. I simply picked up my suitcase from the foyer, walked out into the cold Massachusetts night, and shut the door. The wind off the Atlantic hit my face like truth. I had lost my job, my home, and my son in one day. But what none of them knew, what would change everything, was that I hadn't lost everything. Not yet. The first night after Nathan threw me out, I drove aimlessly along the Massachusetts coast. The moonlight scattered across the waves, pale and cold, like a memory that refused to fade. I stopped in Salem, the same town where I'd started working decades ago, and checked into a small inn overlooking the harbor. The room smelled faintly of salt and cedar. For the first time in 34 years, I was utterly alone. But loneliness has a strange way of sharpening the mind. Sitting by the window, I opened my worn leather notebook and flipped through the last few pages I'd written before everything changed. They were notes from Marjorie Lane, my late employer, the woman who'd founded North Shore Logistics with her bare hands. Marjorie wasn't just my boss. She was the one who taught me everything about business and resilience. While others saw me as a housewife who got lucky, she saw a strategist, a problem solver, a woman who could steady a company through any storm. When she passed away 2 years ago, I thought she had left nothing behind except a fading photograph and a thank you letter. But I was wrong. I reached into my purse and pulled out the thick envelope that had arrived a month earlier from her personal attorney, Daniel Huxley. I'd been too busy working, too afraid to hope, to open it before. Now I slid a trembling finger under the seal. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead embossed with the Lane family crest, and beneath it, documents transferring full ownership of Marjorie's private shares to me, 32% of the company. Enough to make me the majority shareholder. Attached was a valuation report, nearly $9 million in assets. For a long time I just stared. My hands shook. The sea wind rattled the window as if the world itself were gasping beside me. I had never told Nathan about this inheritance. I wanted him to build his own life, not orbit mine. But now the irony twisted like a blade. He had cast me out thinking I was penniless. I opened my laptop and searched for Daniel's number. When he answered, his calm voice was like a lighthouse cutting through fog. "Mrs. Parker," he said, "I was beginning to think you'd never call." "I'm ready," I replied. "I want to activate the trust, every document, every share, and Daniel, make sure my name is on the official record." He paused, sensing the shift in my tone. "You're certain? Once this becomes public, there's no turning back." "I'm certain," I said quietly. "They thought I was nothing. It's time they learn who I really am." Outside, the waves slammed against the seawall, echoing like applause. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. He felt unstoppable. By the next morning, the ocean mist had lifted, leaving behind a thin golden haze over Salem Harbor. I packed my suitcase, checked out of the inn, and drove toward Boston. There was no plan, only a pulse of determination in my chest. If I was going to start over, I wanted a home that was mine alone. No more shared spaces, no more tiptoeing around other people's tempers, just peace. I found myself standing in front of Harrington Estates, one of the city's most exclusive real estate firms. Behind the glass doors, marble floors glimmered and perfume hung in the air. The receptionist blinked at me as I entered, taking in my modest coat and travel bag. "Can I help you, ma'am?" she asked, polite but distant. "Yes," I said evenly. "I'd like to view a property in Cambridge, something spacious, private, preferably near the Charles River." Before she could answer, a young woman stepped forward with a warm smile. "Of course, my name's Sophie Reed. I'm a new associate, but I'd be happy to show you round." Her sincerity was refreshing. I nodded and followed her toward a display of architectural models, but we hadn't gone more than 10 steps before a sharp voice cut through the room. "Sophie, what are you doing?" We screen clients before wasting time with tours. The voice belonged to a tall, sleek woman in a crimson blazer, Clara Donnelly, the AY's regional manager. I recognized the type immediately. All perfume, heels, and poison. Clara's gaze swept over me like I was a misplaced janitor. "You're here to browse?" she asked, smirking. "Our listings start at $2 million. This isn't an open house." "I'm aware," I replied. "I am interested in the Cambridge property on Memorial Drive, the one listed at 2.8. For a brief second, the room fell silent. Then she laughed, short and sharp. "That villa, ma'am, even some of our corporate clients can't afford that own. Let's not embarrass ourselves." I felt the eyes of the other agents drifting toward me, curious, amused. Sophie shifted uncomfortably beside me, her cheeks weening. "I'd still like to see it," I said calmly. Clara crossed her arms. "Then show us proof of funds." Without a word, I opened my purse, pulled out my phone, and tapped my banking app. The screen glowed with digits that even I still wasn't used to seeing. Sophie leaned closer, her lips parting slightly. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's over 9 million. The silence that followed was heavy, stunned. Clara's smile faltered, her color draining. "That can't be real." "It's very real," I said softly. "Now, if you're done wasting time, I'd like to buy the property through Miss Reed." Clara's voice stuttered. Through her? She's a trainee. Then this will be her first sale." I turned to Sophie, who was trembling with shock and delight. "Draw up the papers." By the time I signed the contract, every pair of eyes in the showroom was fixed on me. I could feel the shift the instant when pity turns into awe. As I handed Sophie my card, I looked back at Clara. "Consider this your lesson," I said quietly. "Never measure someone's worth by the shine of their shoes." Her face froze when I stepped back onto the sidewalk. The cold Boston wind swept against my skin, but it felt like freedom. I had a home again, no tone I'd bought out of guilt or sacrifice, one that carried my name and mine alone. The first few days in my new home felt like walking through a dream. The Cambridge villa stood by the river, its tall windows catching the early morning light, filling every corner with warmth. I spent hours watching rowers glide along the Charles, their oars slicing the still water in perfect rhythm. It was the peace I had been chasing all my life. But peace never lasts long when resentment runs in someone else's veins. A week after moving in, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Mom, Rachel's parents are celebrating their 30th anniversary at the Beacon Club. They want you to come. Rachel insists it would mean a lot if he showed up." For a long minute, I just stared at the message. The same people who looked down on me as unfit company now wanted me at their table. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see their faces again, just once before the storm arrived. That evening, I put on a navy silk dress and a pearl necklace Marjorie had given me years ago. As I walked into the Beacon Club, the chandeliers glowed like captured stars, reflecting off wine glasses and polished silver. The air smelled of money and superiority. Nathan spotted me first. His smile was practiced, almost too polite. "Mom, you made it," he said, kissing my cheek quickly as if afraid someone might see. Rachel was radiant in a designer gown. Her mother, Linda, sat at the center of the long mahogany table, her posture as rigid as her tone. "Evelyn," she greeted coolly. "How unexpected. I didn't realize you'd be joining us." "I was invited," I said with a calm smile. "Of course," Linda replied, eyes narrowing. "We were just talking about how difficult retirement must be these days, especially for people without a pension. But at least you're free now to enjoy simple things." Laughter rippled softly around that table. Rachel's father chuckled, sipping his wine. Nathan looked down, pretending not to hear. I forced a polite smile, letting their words bounce harmlessly off me. They thought I was still the woman they dismissed, a broke ex-employee living on sympathy. Then, halfway through dinner, one of Linda's friends pointed toward the television above the bar. "Isn't that your old company, Evelyn?" The screen displayed a breaking news headline. "North Shore Logistics names new majority shareholder Evelyn Parker." For a second, the table went utterly still. Forks froze mid-air. The color drained from Rachel's face. Linda's eyes widened as she turned slowly toward me. The reporter continued, "Sources confirm the late founder, Marjorie Lane, transferred controlling shares to her longtime operations manager, Miss Evelyn Parker. Citing her decades of loyalty and integrity." A small smile tugged at my lips. I folded my napkin neatly and set it beside my plate. "I guess retirement won't be so difficult after all," I said softly. Nathan's mouth opened, but no words came out. Rachel's father cleared his throat, forcing an awkward laugh. "Well, congratulations, Evelyn." "That's quite the surprise." Linda tried to recover, her voice tight. "How wonderful. You must be overwhelmed." "Not really," I said, standing. "I'm quite used to hard work paying off." I left them there, staring, silent, their champagne glasses still half raised. Outside, the Boston night felt crisp and alive. The Charles River shimmered beneath the bridge lights as I crossed it back toward Cambridge. For 30 years I'd given my son everything I had. Tonight, for the first time, I'd taken something back, my dignity. By morning, the dinner scandal had already reached the gossip columns. Someone at the Beacon Club had recorded the newscast and my calm reaction. The clip spread across social media like wildfire. "The disowned mother who became a millionaire overnight." Nathan called the next day, his voice tight and rehearsed. "Mom, that news story people are talking. You could have told us. We looked stupid last night." I kept my tone neutral. "I didn't think my finances were your concern anymore." He exhaled sharply. "Rachel's family is furious. They said you humiliated them. Do you know how that makes me look?" "I imagine." "I said about the same way I looked standing in your kitchen when you told me to leave." He went silent. Then, with that same manipulative calm he'd inherited from his wife, he added, "Mom, people are saying you took advantage of Marjorie, that she was unwell before she died." There. It was the jab I'd been waiting for. They couldn't handle my success, so they'd twist it into scandal. That afternoon, The headlines turned darker. Former employee accused of exploiting late businesswoman. The source anonymous, but I recognized the phrasing. Rachel worked in marketing. This was her handiwork. For hours, I sat at my kitchen counter, the sunlight painting long gold streaks across the marble. My new home suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Then I reached for my phone and called Daniel Huxley. "They're spreading false claims," I said. "I want to respond." He hesitated. "Evelyn, if we go public, it'll draw more attention." "Are you sure?" "I've been silent my whole life," I said. "Not this time." The following morning, I stood at the podium of North Shore Logistics Glass headquarters in Boston, facing a sea of reporters. Cameras flashed, questions buzzed. I waited until the room quieted, then I held up a small envelope, the same one Marjorie had left me. "This," I began, "is the original notarized letter from Marjorie Lane, dated 2 years before her passing. In it, she transfers 32% of company stock to me, citing 34 years of service. Her signature was verified by the Massachusetts State Registrar. A large screen behind me displayed the letter Marjorie's graceful handwriting projected for all to see. To Evelyn Parker, my partner in every storm. You kept this company afloat when I could not. Let this gift be my thank you for your loyalty." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I took a breath and looked straight into the cameras. I never stole anything. I was trusted, and unlike those who profit from lies, I intend to honor that trust. The press conference went viral within hours. Public opinion flipped overnight. Nathan and Rachel's names began appearing in comment threads mocked for their arrogance, pied for their greed. Rachel's company issued a public statement denying involvement, but the internet had already judged them. As for me, I didn't celebrate. I simply closed my laptop and whispered to the quiet house, "That's enough." For the first time in years, my silence was not submission. It was victory. Days after the press conference, the air around Boston shifted. My name, once whispered with pity, now carried a strange new weight. Reporters camped outside North Shore Logistics, hoping for another statement, but I stayed out of sight quietly, attending board meetings and learning the ropes of ownership. Marjorie's old office became mine. Her mahogany desk still smelled faintly of lavender polish. I could almost hear her voice as I sat there, calm, decisive, steady. "Never explain your worth to those who can't see it, Evelyn." But the peace didn't last. Greed has a long memory. One morning, Daniel entered my office, his face unreadable. "You should see this," he said, placing a folder on the desk. Inside were HR records and applicant file. The name at the top made my stomach tighten. Nathan Parker. He had applied for a managerial position at the company. The irony was almost poetic. "Should I decline it immediately?" Daniel asked. I shook my head. "No, let it play out." 2 weeks later, the interviews began. I instructed HR to keep my involvement quiet. Nathan arrived in a tailored suit, confident, unaware that I would be sitting at the head of the conference table. When he stepped through the door and saw me, his composure cracked, his jaw tightened, his eyes darted to the exit. "Mom, Mrs. Parker," I corrected softly. "Please have a seat." He hesitated, then sat, his knuckles white against the folder in his hands. "Tell me," I said, flipping through his resume, "why do you think you're qualified to manage a division of this company?" Hess swallowed hard. "Because I understand numbers, performance metrics, things you probably don't." The arrogance stung. "But I didn't show it." "Interesting. It says, here, you were terminated from your last position for misconduct." His face flushed. That was politics. They wanted cheaper labor. I closed the file. "I see." Then, with a steady gaze, I added, "Unfortunately, we're looking for people who know how to build, not destroy." The silence was suffocating. He knew exactly what I meant. When the meeting ended, he lingered by the door. "You're really enjoying this, aren't you?" I stood slowly, gathering my papers. Enjoying it? No, but I am remembering it. He left without another word. That night, I sat on the balcony of my Cambridge villa, the city lights flickering across the water. I wasn't angry anymore. I was deliberate. For 30 years, I had been the invisible scaffolding holding everyone else upright. Now I was rebuilding alone. A week later, Daniel informed me that the townhouse I'd purchased for Nathan years ago was still legally traceable to my name. The payments had been made directly from my personal accounts. "We can reclaim it," he said carefully. "Through asset recovery, it's within your rights." "Do it," I replied. Within a month, the house was legally back in my possession. Nathan and Rachel were forced to vacate, their final link to my sacrifices severed. I expected to feel triumphant, but what I felt instead was clarity, sharp and cold, as winter wind off the harbor. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was restoration. The world was finally giving me back what I had quietly earned all along. The storm arrived on a Friday evening, rolling in from the Atlantic like a warning. Wind lashed against the glass walls of my living room, and the Charles River churned under the bridge lights. I just poured myself a cup of tea when the intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Parker," the guard's voice crackled. "There's a man outside the gate. Says he's your son." My hand tightened around the cup. "Let him in," I said quietly. Minutes later, Nathan appeared at the front door, soaked, trembling, his suit plastered to his skin. For a brief, painful moment, I saw the little boy he once was, the child I'd held through every fever, every heartbreak. He stepped inside without waiting for permission. "Mom," he gasped. "Please just listen. I know we made mistakes, but I've lost everything. Rachel left me. I have nowhere to go." I folded my arms, keeping my voice even. "You have friends. You have options." "No," he said, shaking his head, water dripping from his hair. "No one wants to help me now. They all saw what happened online. They think I'm some kind of scammer. I just want us to be a family again." A flicker of pity stirred in me. But then I noticed something odd. His phone lay face down on the counter, their light blinking faintly. Recording. My stomach turned cold. "You're live, aren't you?" I said. He froze. "What?" "No." I picked up the phone. The screen showed a streaming app, thousands of viewers watching in real time. Comments scrolled like wildfire. "His mother is cold again. She's lying. Poor guy." I turned the camera toward myself. "Hello, everyone," I said softly. "I hope you're enjoying the show because this is the last one." Then I ended the stream and placed the phone on the table between us. Nathan's face went pale. "Mom," I was just trying to explain. "You were trying to use me again?" I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. "You didn't come here for forgiveness. You came for footage." He sank into a chair, shaking his head. "You don't understand. I've lost my job, my house, my marriage. You ruined my life." I stared at him for a long, quiet moment. "I gave you life, and you threw it away." Lightning flashed through the window, lighting his face in stark white. For a second, the only sound was rain hammering the glass. Then I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and began typing. Nathan watched, bewildered. "What are you doing?" "Ending this," I said. I signed into my account, opened my portfolio, and initiated a transfer half of my company shares. Moved into a new foundation bearing Marjorie Lane's name. Daniel had helped me set it up months ago. A nonprofit dedicated to women holistic everything, helping their families stand. When I hit confirm, a sense of calm washed through me. "There," I whispered. "Now no one can ever use me again, not even you." Nathan stood up, furious. "You're insane. You're throwing away millions." "No," I said quietly. "I'm freeing myself." He stared at me, speechless. For the first time in his life, he had no power over me at all. When security arrived to escort him out, I didn't look back. I simply stood by the window, watching his shadow disappear into the storm. The rain kept falling, cleansing the glass, erasing the last trace of him. A full year has passed since that night. Spring has returned to Massachusetts, soft and salt-scented, the kind that makes the sea look like liquid glass. I now live in a restored colonial house on a quiet bluff overlooking Gloucester Harbor. The mornings begin with the cry of gulls and the rhythm of waves, not with arguments or expectations. The company runs smoothly without me. The Marjorie Lane Foundation has funded scholarships for over 40 women who lost jobs or homes while supporting their families. Every letter of gratitude that arrives feels like a small miracle, a reminder that what I once lost had meaning after all. Sometimes as I sip coffee on the porch, I think of Nathan. I haven't seen him since that storm. Word reached me that he moved west for a while, chasing one failed business after another. Whether he's found peace, I don't know. What I don't know is that love without respect becomes a chain, and chains eventually break. One afternoon, a reporter visited to write a feature on the foundation. She was young, bright-eyed, full of admiration. "Mrs. Parker," she asked gently, "do you ever regret cutting ties with your son?" I smiled, setting my coffee cup down. "No," I said. "Regret is what we feel when we betray ourselves. I loved him too long without boundaries. That was my mistake." She hesitated. "So what did you learn from it all?" The wind brushed through the wisteria blooming along the fence. I looked toward the harbor, where the sunlight danced on the waves. "I learned that kindness must have walls," I said softly. "Because if you give everything your time, your strength, your soul, people stop seeing it as love. They see it as duty. And when you stop giving, they call it cruelty." The reporter wrote insolence, her expression thoughtful. When she left, the house grew quiet again, filled only with the hum of the ocean. I walked down to the pier and let the wind carry through my hair. The tide was rising, the air alive with the smell of brine and cedar. For the first time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. I had spent my youth building a life for others. Now, in the calm light of my later years, I was finally building one for myself. And as the waves kissed the shore below, I whispered into the breeze, almost like a prayer. Kindness should never cost your freedom.